After losing a game that they led for 47 minutes and 59.5 seconds, the Thunder needed to bounce back in Game 2, otherwise the odds that they could win the series would be virtually zero. Luckily for the Thunder, bouncing back is what they do best, as they are now 5-0 following a loss in these playoffs. But this wasn't your usual bounce-back blowout. Indiana actually kept it competitive for most of the game despite the scoreboard. It just wasn't enough to undo a tragic second quarter run where the Thunder took control with just a few small but devastatingly effective adjustments, resulting in the double-digit Thunder win. So what were those adjustments, and how can Indiana recover heading back to their home court? Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. So, going forward for these finals, we're going to have three key questions going in. How will Indiana's turnovers look this game, as that was obviously a huge factor in Game 1, as they had 19 in the first half, but just like 5 or 6 in the second. Will OKC's fast break offense improve? That is another huge factor, given that they didn't actually take much advantage of those 19 first half turnovers. And finally, can the Thunder target Miles Turner with the Chet Holmgren matchup more, as they really failed to do that in Game 1. But for the first quarter of this game, that's probably the most even quarter that both of these teams have played out of the 5 to this point, at least up until the last minute. While there was only one lead change in Game 1 in the last half second, there were 4 already in just the first 3 minutes of the game. For the most part, these teams were struggling offensively due to their shooting as opposed to their turnovers. Both had 3 in the quarter, otherwise it was almost all up to half-court production. Something I didn't highlight from Game 1 as well as I would have liked is Indiana's approach to shot quality for the second half. A lot of the times when you have a team that features an unselfish, egalitarian offense, you go for the classic pass up a good shot for a great shot platitude, and it's one that is good. It historically leads to a lot of success. The 2014 San Antonio Spurs led that charge, and they're a team that this Pacers team has drawn a lot of comparisons to, but the Spurs didn't have Alex Caruso, SGA, Cason Wallace, Jalen Williams, and Lou Dort playing the passing lanes. If you get a good shot versus OKC, you should take it. Both of the threes that Miles Turner made in the fourth quarter of Game 1, I wouldn't call great shots. However, they both went in, because if you pass up a good shot, there's a good chance you're going to end up turning it over in the process of looking for a great one. In the first for Indy, there were a lot of shots like this. Miles Turner here has a solid look from mid-range, but one that he would very understandably pass up more often than not. He has the quick trigger in this case, and he banks it in. The same can be said for this corner 3 for Obi Toppin. His hot hand in Game 1 carried right over, and he didn't hesitate to capitalize on this small window of opportunity. The only downside of this is Indiana was definitely very jump shot heavy. They took 22 shots in the first quarter, and 15 of them were from behind the arc. And 4 or 5 of them were mid-range jump shots, so truly very little offense at the rim. But they still managed to hang in there offensively, and OKC had their own troubles on that end. In particular, SGA struggled to find his shot, missing a ton of short middies and floaters. He hit a corner catch-and-shoot 3 and got a classic foul grift to get to the line, but that was it for him. Also, Nembhard did get away with a grift on a midi if we're just trying to keep score of the grifting tally. It was actually even in that case, but Chet Holmgren, on the other hand, was used more actively in the offense, which answers our third question, especially towards the end of this quarter. This 3 was Chet's second make back-to-back. Actually, I looked at the box score and it said he went 1 for 3 from outside, so clearly one of them was a long 2. It might have been this one, it might have been the one before, but SGA gets the Thomas Bryant switch, easily blows by him, causing Siakam to, ball watch, and he's left wide open. I really don't know what Pascal was doing there, but what Chet did here is exactly what I've been wanting to see. At the very end of the first, after hitting that 3 and the long 2, off of an inbound play, we have Chet finally attacking Miles off of the dribble, getting the edge on the drive with his pump fake, and using his body perfectly to shield the ball away from Miles as he's going up. You may have also noticed that Hartenstein is on the floor. He and Chet played the entire second half of the first after not sharing the floor at all in game one. They won those minutes, so we'll probably end up seeing more of it. But like I said, the first was neck and neck the whole way through, but OKC managed to dominate in that last minute. Pascal Siakam was also left wide open at the last second from three, and he nailed the shot, but for some reason he took a long pause and ended up releasing the shot after the buzzer. A truly puzzling mistake there, but OKC leads by 6, 26-20 going into that second quarter. 20 is a pretty rough offensive output for Indiana, but they didn't turn it over like crazy, and I feel like OKC is generally less likely to bounce back from bad half-court struggles than Indiana is. That didn't ring true, but that's what I wrote at the time. One thing Indiana didn't want to do going into the second is lose the minutes that both teams' lead guard is off of the floor, but that's exactly what they did. Here, J-Dub gets the and one finish over TJ McConnell, who cannot set his feet in time to draw the charge. He also found Caruso with a great look-ahead pass on the break for a layup that was goaltended by Siakam, and he even hit a mid-range over Pascal as well. Aaron Wiggins finished a tough drive and hit an elbow step-back three. Meanwhile, Siakam couldn't create any space, and the Pacers continued putting up nearly exclusively jump shots. The irony of that being, even though Indy wasn't turning the ball over, their shots were consistently resulting in long rebounds that allowed OKC to get on the break anyways, which generated a good amount of offense for them. The Thunder would win the non-SGA Hallie minutes by 7 points. And what made matters worse for Indiana is SGA managed to find his shot in this quarter while Hallie continued to struggle. SGA's first jumper and first shot of the second was all net despite a heavy contest from Benedict Mathurin, who was playing pretty strong defense the whole way through, and this time again with Mathurin on him, SGA drives inside after gaining some separation. Nesmith is there to protect the rim, but Shea head fakes to get him to jump early. Then he brings the ball down and around him, takes the bump in the back from Mathurin, and finishes it off of the glass. From the 9.5 minute mark to the 4.5 minute mark, OKC would go on a 19-2 run, including yet another bucket from Aaron Wiggins, and I do mean bucket because yet again, he hits a step-back three, again from the same spot on that left elbow, which gives him 8 points in the quarter. The Pacers were not getting to the rim. They just were not. After this huge run, which gave OKC a 22-point lead, Nembhard would steal the ball and take it in for a finish on the other end. Then Siakam finished an and one with a long stride on this drive, hitting it off of the glass as he was falling down, and he'd get to the rim once again a possession after that on a strong drive as Chet was caught out of position because he was over-helping on the corner, and then on the break, Siakam found Nesmith in that very same corner for a three, which meant that Indy responded with a 10-0 run, closing the gap to just 13 points. It really seems like this team just does not know how to roll over and die. But then OKC just went on another run of their own, though this time the Pacers weren't completely without any scoring. However, despite having just 9 first-half turnovers instead of the 19 they had in Game 1, they trail by 18 points now. So, with 10 less turnovers, they trail by 6 more points than the first half of Game 1. That is very far from ideal. They need to get into the paint more, both to get easier shots near the rim, but also to open up the shots that they're getting on the perimeter. Because what I said about passing up the great shot for the good one, they're not even really getting that many good ones. Most of these threes at least have a decent contest on them. There are very few open shots that they're getting, period, and that's a huge problem. Hallie also needs to get it going, though he isn't hitting any of his pull-up threes, and he's struggling to drive a lot when he's dealing with Lou Dort and J-Dub's physicality. Indiana always has the power of the comeback, but I don't feel good about them going into this second half. OKC leads 59-41. There's little to be said about the third quarter in this one, as for the most part, it was the same story of the first quarter. It again just became a back and forth. Indiana would not go down any further, but they also could not close the gap. Miles Turner started hitting a bunch of shots, but they weren't getting offense from really anybody else. They went on a small run again before the halfway point. Here, Siakam gets the offensive rebound, doesn't rush the pass, which is key, and he finds Nesmith wide open on on the elbow, and he hits the three, which cuts OKC's lead to 14. But then the Thunder just bounce right back, as they have been all game. In this case, it was a pair of threes from Caruso and Wiggins, as both have been shooting the lights out and scoring at a very high volume relative to their minutes. Hallie hits his second shot of the game in the third with 4 minutes left in the quarter, but that was it. So I wouldn't say he had turned it on by this point by any means. Once again, the Thunder were also the team that closed the quarter stronger, as once again, we saw the double bigs from them, and once again, it works, as Hartenstein on the short roll here throws a lob to Chet, who hammers it in off of the standing vertical. SGA also continues to hit his shots more comfortably like he did in the second, and Indy continued to not get into the paint. Again, they hit enough threes to hang in there, but they aren't going to win this game unless they get to the rim more. OKC leads by 19 going into the fourth, which historically means that the game is basically over. I couldn't find the stat for a 19-point lead, but no team has ever recovered from a 20-point deficit heading into the fourth in the NBA Finals, so the odds aren't in Indiana's favor. Then again, that is kind of how they like it. Then again, probably not to this extent. 93-74 is pretty rough. And the story, unfortunately for them, remained the same in the fourth, because Indiana no longer bleeding out, but they also were not recovering from that second quarter blow either. They got what I thought could be a huge momentum play early on. Miles Turner dunks all over Hartenstein out of the pick and roll with Hallie here, but then the next possession, after getting a lucky miss from an on-fire and wide-open Wiggins, they did a bad job on the glass and allowed Wiggins to get another wide-open look, and to me, that shot felt like the official end, the real nail in the coffin, and that's with quite a bit of time on the clock. Halliburton started to hit some shots. He got a wide-open dunk at one point, a short runner, a mid-range pull-up, and a pair of threes off of the dribble, but it was too little too late. Really, all that did was pad his box score and make it appear like he had a better game than he actually did. 12 of his 17 points were in that fourth. Lots of games are won in just a single quarter. That's actually a very common thing in the NBA. In the first, third, and fourth, Indiana only lost those quarters by a total of 2 points, but they got cooked in the second quarter so hard that they just could not recover with the rest of the clock available. OKC wins 123-107. The Thunder are now 5-0 following a loss in this postseason, overall 17-2 following a loss in the total season, including the regular season. So that is pretty much what I expected to happen. I did not think there was virtually any way that Indiana would lose this or would win this game, and well, that's what we got. As for just some non-game notes, I have not been looking at Twitter lately. In fact, going forward, I think that's going to be a part of the charm of this channel, is that I'm just going to fully denounce and never participate in NBA Twitter again. That's what I'm thinking, not a promise. But apparently, according to Rudy, everyone was talking about the presentation differences, and I did notice it. They changed the score bug, and they started projecting these very shitty clip art versions of the NBA championship trophy. I don't know why it's so much to ask to just put it on the fucking floor, to actually physically have any of it on the actual court, not projected onto it. Like, save that shit for advertisement if you really have to do it. It's a technology that's improved over the years. It was certainly much worse when they initially debuted it, but it just looks bad. It doesn't look real, and it's just not good enough. ESPN, the vibe, the aura, if you will, around the finals is heavily set by the presentation and the environment, and they're dropping the ball in this category. Apparently, Game 1 was also the lowest viewed finals game since, other than the bubble, since like the 80s. I don't really care, though. I'm kind of tired of ratings discourse, and I just want to talk about the good basketball. And weirdly enough, even though this game was a blowout, it was pretty good basketball more than it wasn't. As I mentioned, it was mostly just that second quarter, but let's real quick revisit those 3 questions from the start. Will Indiana's turnovers look better in this game? Well, yes, they were much improved. This time, though, they lost for a different reason, and ironically, they lost because they were playing so fearful of turning the ball over, which is really the staple of OKC's defense when you look beyond just, wow, they turn it over a lot for other teams. Will OKC's fast break offense improve? Well, I feel like it did marginally. They certainly blew less opportunities than they did before, but there were also far less opportunities, so it's hard to really say. I'm unsure of the fast break stats specifically in this one, but my gut tells me that it was more or less improved, but not in a way that was the reason that mattered. And last, will/can OKC target Miles Turner with Chet more? Yes, they would, and yes, they could. However, they didn't really do it beyond that first quarter, so that was a little disappointing. At the very least, it showed itself to be something that the Thunder have in their back pocket to use again. But speaking of the Thunder, let's get into some notes on them, and I'm going to quick fire because it's mostly stuff that the Pacers did wrong that I want to talk about. But for the Thunder, it's hard to lose when Caruso and Wiggins do this. Caruso had 20 points in 27 minutes on 78% true shooting, 4 for 8 from 3, 13 points in his first 13 minutes. Wiggins had 18 points in 21 minutes, especially a really big scoring second quarter, which, as we've talked about, is the big one there. And he also went 5 for 8 from outside. We also saw more Hartenstein minutes, which I kind of expected because I felt like Indiana needed to feel a little bit more physicality from them, and they did. They also ran double bigs for a big stretch in the first and a portion of the third. Both times it went well. They completely avoided that in game one because they've had weird mixed results with that lineup in the playoffs, and Indiana is a very fast team. They ironically lost the rebounding battle in game one because they were running smaller, and I think they realized that that was an advantage that they could, it'd be nice to have that advantage on your side. Dort, J-Dub, and Wallace could not hit their damn threes again. Dub in general went 5 for 14 from the field, which is bad, but the boost from Wiggins and Caruso made up for their offensive woes. Also, I did say again, as though Dort had a bad shooting game one. He had a great shooting game one, but Dub and Wallace did not, and they continued to shoot poorly. Dort shot poorly for the first time in the series. They used Chet more effectively, actually trying to actively involve him in the action. It's funny how that works. SGA shot it terribly in the first quarter, but never looked back. 11 for 21 from the field, just 2 turnovers, 65% true shooting. A much better game than his first one. Also improved from that first game. As a team, they shot the 3 much better, 14 of 36 from outside. Though again, just to highlight how big their impact on offense was, if you removed Caruso and Aaron's 3-pointers, then they shot just 5 of 20. Which isn't good. Luckily, Caruso and Aaron Wiggins do exist, and that's just not how it works. But the point is, they kind of carried the 3-point shooting. I don't know that they can rely on those two to carry on offense to the extent that they did again, especially not both of them in the same game, but offense isn't even really why they won this game. It's just the reason that it was a blowout. The defense, insane. Even when they are not making teams turn it over, their paint defense is honestly underrated because of how good the perimeter defense is. Not that those things aren't connected. In fact, that's something that is often annoying to me about discussions about defense, because a big reason OKC's interior defense is great is because the perimeter defense doesn't even allow dudes to get to that spot on the floor. They are also good at protecting the rim when they do get there. So Indiana got very few opportunities at the rim due to their perimeter defense, and they had even few good opportunities at the rim due to their interior defense. Their wings are also good weak side help guys. Both SGA and Dub averaged 1 block per game this season for a reason, and of course their bigs are great rim protectors, especially with both of them on the floor. OKC allowed 9 total shots in the restricted area, and only 5 of them went in. And in fact, one of those was a fast break layup. So 4 for 8 on half court in the restricted area, that's nuts. But as for some notes on the Pacers, let me say this up top. We're not going to have any doom and gloom here. The Pacers should feel great going home and having this series tied up. That's really all that they could expect. They should also feel great about being right there with them for basically all but 5 minutes in this game. It's just that was a real bitch of a 5-minute stretch for them. As I mentioned after the first, the big way that Indiana Indiana beat OKC in the second half of game 1 was by reducing the amount of dribbling and passing they did, opting for the good shot over hunting the great one, reducing the volume of turnover possibility by just simply settling for more jump shots, but it doesn't really feel like settling when they're going in. They weren't going in as much this time around, though it kind of felt like settling a lot. There's one issue with this approach, because sometimes good shots aren't enough. The best offenses regularly generate great shots, and Indy usually does that, but they've really struggled to do that against OKC through 2 games. Whether or not they win or lose will be heavily dictated by their shooting as a result of this, and this time around they went 14 for 40 from outside, and 18 of 33 on non-restricted area 2-pointers. That's actually really good shooting in that medium range, but that's the least efficient offense there is. If OKC is going to choose one of the 3 levels to have teams shoot well, they're gonna choose the mid-range. Duh. That's still ultimately, in the case of how they shot this game, 1.1 points per possession, which isn't terrible, but it's also not much. And if you're consistently taking that shot instead of a much higher percentage shot at the rim, that's a huge win for the defense. If you're overall taking 82 shots and 73 of them are jumpers or floaters, then that is a big win for the defense. A lot of this was due to Hallie struggling to dribble the ball inside. A big reason for this is his lack of strength, which is probably his biggest weakness as a creator. Yes, he has super strong handle. In terms of efficiency, basically the best handle in the fucking NBA. He can't always create space just by crossing his man over, especially against really good defenders. In fact, most drives in the NBA require at least some degree or another of physicality, and Hallie cannot match the physicality of OKC's defenders. So many times in this game, he would dribble and bump into Dort, bump into J-Dub, even bump into Kaysen and Caruso at times, and the defender wouldn't move, and Halliburton would. There were like 2 or 3 different instances where he turned the ball over literally because he just took a bump and could not hold onto the ball afterwards. This was my big concern with him against the Thunder, was that he just wouldn't be able to drive inside basically ever, and that would take away a lot of the advantage creation that he brings to the table, and that's exactly what happened. Hallie did a pretty poor job of creating opportunities for his teammates beyond just his inability to create opportunities for himself. And if Hallie is just not generating great looks out there despite playing major minutes, I mean, that's obviously a terrible, terrible thing. He did only have a -5 in his minutes, so that does say something. Doesn't say enough. Pascal Siakam was also terrible. He disappeared offensively in those non-Hallie minutes at the start of the second, which is when Indy really lost this game, and they really, really needed him in that moment. Aaron Nesmith shot the 3 well, 4 for 8 from outside, but he's been bad inside the arc in this series. He went 1 for 4 this time around. His mid-range/driving game basically just hasn't existed in this series. In that game 1 specifically, he was getting embarrassed damn near every time he drove inside. Andrew Nembhard's processing in the half court was cool. He did miss 2 wide open threes that were pretty big momentum plays, I think, and he also had a team worst +/-, but I don't necessarily think that was his fault. He was just on the floor when that run happened. I also feel like him and TJ McConnell, it makes sense to play them together for the maximum ball handling, but I also feel like they kind of take away from each other in that regard a little bit. TJ was great in his minutes. He was hitting his shots. He was getting dimes. He was pushing the pace, but I don't know that TJ and Nembhard play their best when they're together, but they also have to play together a lot. Obi Toppin hit his first 3 out of that corner, and I thought we were in for another heater, but then he missed his next 7 shots. I know I stopped myself from cutting it off because I thought it'd be funny, but I know I said his hot hand continued after game 1. Yeah, it continued into that first shot and then did not after that. OKC did get 7 more free throw attempts in this one, but they also made 10 more of them. They shot way better on the free throws they got. And something that was really big, I mentioned the Thunder needed to get more physical. They needed to get more size in there. I felt like the way that they lost the fourth quarter was that they elected to go small as Indiana did when they should have tried to counter it. They won the rebounding battle this time around. Indiana beat them on the glass by 17 total rebounds in game one. This time, OKC grabbed 8 more rebounds than the Pacers. So, as for the series going forward, if I had to guess, I probably think the series will be tied up going into Game 5. I think the Pacers are too good to lose both games at home, and the Thunder are too good to go down 3-1, which I'm pretty damn excited about that. I'm pretty sure, as confident as I really can be, that we will get a tied series in this one after 4, but we shall see. As for Indiana, I do think some of the weaknesses, some of the problems that they displayed in game 1 are things that came to bite them in this one. Question is, are those issues that can be recovered from? Is there adjustments that they can make? Or is this kind of how it's going to go? Is this just, it's destined to be the Pacers outshoot the Thunder to beat them, or they don't beat them? Or can they beat them in a way that's not just, we're better at shooting than you? I don't know. The odds don't feel great. I will say they need to especially place an emphasis on getting opportunities in the paint. And as much as this is easier said than done, they cannot play afraid versus the Thunder the same way that they have been, especially in this game. Yes, turning the ball over versus them is bad, but what's worse is when you just literally give up on getting good possessions because you're afraid of turning the ball over. That is the other side of this double-edged sword here, and both edges are sharp. I don't know, my metaphor game has been bad lately. You're gonna have to forgive me for that, but the video is over. Whatever, doesn't matter. What's even real? Why am I acting like this? The video's done. Goodbye. Rudy's editing it. Good for him. Have a good night, tri-state area.